My family left me home for Labor Day, while they took the vacation of a lifetime. Then they posted, "Best trip ever. When she's not around, LOL." I thought they were humiliating me. I had no idea they were using my identity to commit millions of dollars in fraud, while someone else pretended to be me. By the time the FBI knocked on my door, everything I believed about my family had fallen apart. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, if your own family excluded you from a trip like this, would you confront them immediately or stay quiet and find out why? Now let me tell you exactly what happened. My name is Celeste Romano, and until that Labor Day weekend, I believed betrayal had limits. I was wrong. 2 days after my family left without me, a federal investigator knocked on my apartment door and asked why someone had been moving millions of dollars using my identity. That question changed everything. But to understand how I got there, I have to start with the family vacation I was never supposed to miss. I'm 31 years old, and I work as a forensic accountant in Boston. My career revolves around financial records, audits, and finding irregularities that most people overlook. I've always trusted facts more than emotions. Numbers don't lie. People often do. I live alone in a quiet apartment overlooking the Charles River. My life is simple. I enjoy my work, spend weekends reading or hiking, and keep enough distance from my family to avoid unnecessary drama. We still meet for birthdays, holidays, and the occasional Sunday dinner, but I learned years ago that peace often comes from saying less. The person at the center of the story is my older brother, Victor Romano. Victor is charismatic in a way that attracts people immediately. He owns several businesses, drives expensive cars, wears tailored suits, and somehow convinces everyone that every risky decision is actually brilliant. Family members admire him. Friends call him successful. My parents have always defended him, even when his stories didn't quite add up. I've never trusted him completely. As someone trained to examine financial patterns, I couldn't ignore how often Victor's companies appeared, disappeared, or changed ownership. Whenever I asked simple questions, he laughed them off. "You think like an auditor even at dinner," he would joke. Everyone else laughed. I didn't. About a week before Labor Day weekend, my mother called me. "Don't make any plans," she said cheerfully. "For what?" "You'll see." Before I could ask another question, she ended the call. The next day, my father repeated exactly the same thing.
"Stay home this weekend.
Just trust us." Even my aunt texted me, "Make sure you're free on Saturday." Their excitement felt strangely coordinated. Naturally, I assumed they were organizing some kind of surprise. My birthday was only a few weeks away, and although my family wasn't known for elaborate celebrations, I convinced myself they were finally trying to do something thoughtful. Looking back, I realize how badly I wanted to believe that. Friday evening arrived. I finished work, bought groceries, cleaned my apartment, and ignored invitations from 2 friends who wanted to spend the holiday weekend in Maine. "I already have family plans," I told them. Those words still bother me. Saturday morning arrived quietly. By 9 o'clock, no one had called. At 10, I texted my mother. No reply. At 11, I called my father. Straight to voicemail. I figured they were driving somewhere to surprise me later. Noon came. Still nothing. Around 12:30, my phone buzzed with an Instagram notification. It wasn't a message. It was my cousin Emily's story. Curious, I opened it. The first photo showed a beautiful lakeside resort near Lake Tahoe. The second showed my parents smiling on a boat. The third showed Victor raising a glass while everyone around him laughed. Then came the group photo. Every member of my immediate family was standing together. Everyone except me. Across the image, Emily had written in large white letters, "Best trip ever." A few seconds later, another story appeared. This one had a caption that made my stomach tighten. "Best trip ever, when she's not around, LOL." Several people reacted with laughing emojis. Then I noticed something that hurt even more. My mother had liked the story. I stared at my phone for what felt like forever. At first, I assumed it had to be some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe they had planned another celebration afterward. Maybe they expected me to join later. Maybe.
No.
The more photos appeared, the clearer the truth became. They had rented a large lake house. They were eating together, taking boat rides, watching fireworks, sharing family dinners. No one had forgotten to invite me. I had been intentionally left behind. I didn't call. I didn't send angry messages. I didn't comment on the posts. Instead, I closed Instagram, placed my phone face down on the kitchen table, and made myself a cup of coffee. I needed to think before reacting. Years of investigating financial fraud had taught me something valuable. People reveal the most when they believe no one is watching. If my family wanted me excluded badly enough to lie for an entire week, there had to be a reason. Late that evening, my phone vibrated again. For a brief moment, I hoped someone had finally realized what they'd done. Instead, it was another notification. Victor had uploaded a short video. Everyone was gathered around a fire pit. Someone off camera shouted, "To family!" Everyone cheered. Victor lifted his drink, smiled directly into the camera, and said, "This weekend couldn't have happened if everything had gone according to plan." The people around him laughed. The video ended before anyone explained what he meant. Most viewers probably thought it was an innocent joke. I didn't. Something about the way he said those words felt deliberate, calculated, almost like an inside joke shared by everyone except me. That was the moment I stopped feeling hurt and started becoming suspicious. I had no idea that hundreds of miles away, someone was already using my identity, or that the family vacation everyone seemed so desperate to keep me away from wasn't really a vacation at all. It was the opening move in a much larger crime, and I was about to become its perfect target. The Labor Day weekend came and went. I stayed home. No one called. No one apologized. By Monday evening, my family's social media posts had slowed down, replaced by ordinary photos of sunsets, restaurant meals, and smiling faces pretending everything was perfectly normal. I never responded. Not because I had forgiven them, because I wanted to understand why. Tuesday morning, I returned to work. My coworkers noticed I was quieter than usual, but no one asked many questions. We were approaching the end of the fiscal quarter, and deadlines left little room for personal conversations. For most of the day, I buried myself in spreadsheets and audit reports. Numbers always helped me organize my thoughts. At least they usually did. Around 4 in the afternoon, my receptionist walked into my office, carrying a large certified envelope. "Special delivery for you." I thanked her and looked at the return address. Silver Crest Resort and Casino, Las Vegas, Nevada. I frowned. I had never been there. Assuming it was some kind of marketing promotion, I opened it without much concern. The first sentence immediately drained the color from my face. "Dear Ms. Celeste Romano, congratulations on your approval for Platinum VIP credit services." I read the letter again and again. According to the document, I had recently opened a private gaming account with an available credit line exceeding $2 million. The application listed my full legal name, my home address, my date of birth, my social security number. Every detail was correct, except one. I had never submitted the application. My hands became cold. This wasn't junk mail. Someone had stolen my identity. I immediately called the customer service number printed at the bottom of the letter. After several transfers, I was connected to a fraud investigator named Rebecca Collins. She verified my identity before asking a question that made my stomach twist. "Ms. Romano, are you currently in Massachusetts?" "Yes." There was a brief silence. "According to our records, you completed your account verification in Nevada 3 days ago." "That's impossible." Rebecca remained professional. "Could you confirm that you did not appear in person at our resort on Saturday afternoon?" "I've never even visited your casino." More silence. Then her tone changed. "I believe we have a serious problem." She explained that the account had passed every layer of security. A driver's license had been scanned. A passport had been presented. Digital signatures matched perfectly. Even facial recognition software had approved the identity. Every safeguard had failed. Someone had become me. Rebecca promised to freeze the account immediately while their internal fraud team reviewed the verification process. Before ending the call, she asked one final question. "Would you be willing to cooperate with federal investigators if necessary?" I didn't hesitate. Absolutely. The moment I hung up, I contacted every major credit bureau and froze my credit reports. Then I called my bank. No unauthorized withdrawals. Next came my retirement account. Everything looked normal. Then I reviewed my business accounts. Still clean. For nearly 2 hours, I searched every financial record connected to my name. Nothing unusual, which somehow made the casino account even more disturbing. Someone wasn't making random purchases. They were preparing something much larger. That evening, I drove home instead of taking the subway. My apartment suddenly felt less secure than it had only 24 hours earlier. I locked every door, checked every window, then sat at my kitchen table staring at the casino letter. Something didn't fit. Identity thieves usually wanted quick money, credit cards, loans, wire transfers. They didn't usually build elaborate fake identities capable of passing facial verification inside luxury casinos. Whoever had done this possessed resources, planning, patience. As I replayed everything in my mind, my thoughts drifted back to the Labor Day trip. The timing was too perfect. My family had insisted I stay home. While they were in Nevada, someone pretending to be me had appeared in Nevada. I wanted to dismiss the connection. I couldn't. The next morning, my phone rang just after 8. Rebecca Collins again. Ms. Romano, we've completed our preliminary review. What did you find? I can't disclose everything because the investigation is ongoing. I waited, but I can tell you one thing. Her voice became noticeably quieter. The individual using your identity did not arrive alone. My heartbeat accelerated. What do you mean? Our security footage shows multiple people accompanying the suspect. I gripped the phone tighter. Can I see the footage? I'm afraid company policy doesn't allow us to release surveillance directly. Disappointment washed over me. Then Rebecca added something unexpected. However, I held my breath. Our investigators noticed one person in the group who appeared extremely uncomfortable. What do you mean? She kept looking toward the exits. Rebecca paused before continuing. She looked frightened. I swallowed. Can you describe her? I can't identify guests by name. Another pause. But she appeared to be a woman in her late 50s. Late 50s. My mother was 58. I felt my pulse pounding inside my ears. Rebecca wasn't accusing anyone. She wasn't confirming identities. But suddenly, the family vacation no longer looked like an innocent holiday. It looked like something else entirely. Something carefully planned. After thanking her, I ended the call and sat silently in my office. I opened my calendar. Labor Day weekend. Lake Tahoe, Nevada. The casino. The fake account.
My family.
Every fact pointed toward the same weekend. But facts alone weren't enough. I needed evidence. And somewhere, someone already knew far more about Victor Romano than I did. I just didn't know that person was about to contact me. The email arrived just before sunrise. I almost deleted it. The sender's name meant nothing to me. Daniel Mercer. The subject line read, I know why your family needed you out of Nevada. For several seconds, I simply stared at the screen. Most anonymous emails promising answers turned out to be scams. But this one contained a single attachment. Not a document. Not a photograph. Just a scanned business card. It belonged to Victor Romano. Across the back, someone had handwritten 3 words. He'll destroy you. No signature. No explanation. I replied with only one sentence. Who are you? Less than 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Ms. Romano? The man's voice sounded calm, measured, almost cautious. This is Daniel Mercer. What do you want? I want you to know that none of this is your fault. I remained silent. He continued. I've been waiting for someone to contact me for almost a year. Why me? Because Victor finally crossed a line he never crossed before. I leaned back in my chair. What line? He stole someone else's identity. A chill ran through me. Daniel asked if we could meet somewhere public. Not a restaurant. Not a coffee shop. A law office in downtown Boston where every meeting room was monitored and every visitor signed in. His insistence on security made me curious enough to agree. That afternoon, I walked into the office building carrying nothing except my notebook. Daniel was already waiting. He looked older than I expected. early 50s, gray beginning to appear around his temples. His suit wasn't expensive, but it was neat. The face looking back at me wasn't angry. It looked tired. "Thank you for coming," he said. I almost didn't. I wouldn't have blamed you. We sat across from each other, inside a small conference room. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then Daniel slid a thick folder across the table. "I worked with Victor for 6 years." I looked up. "In what capacity?" "We co-founded Romano Strategic Holdings." That surprised me. Victor had always described himself as the sole founder. Daniel smiled without humor. "That's one of many lies." He opened the folder. Inside were incorporation papers bearing both their signatures. Old partnership agreements, financial statements, board meeting minutes. Everything appeared authentic. "What happened?" I asked. "He forged documents transferring my ownership interests." "You sued?" "I tried." Daniel folded his hands together. "But by the time I discovered everything, the evidence had already been altered." "So you lost?" "I lost my company." He paused. "My reputation. My retirement. My marriage." The room fell silent. "I've spent the last 8 months documenting everything Victor has done since then." He reached into another box sitting beside the table. This one contained dozens of organized binders. Every tab carried dates, bank accounts, property records, corporate registrations, international wire transfers. I had spent my career reviewing financial evidence. Even from a quick glance, I could tell these files represented thousands of hours of work. "You collected all of this?" Daniel nodded. "I wasn't trying to destroy Victor." "What were you trying to do?" "I was waiting until I could prove everything." He opened another binder. Several companies appeared repeatedly. Different names, different addresses, different owners. Yet every trail eventually connected back to Victor. Layer after layer. One corporation owned another, which owned another, which transferred money to another. Classic shell company structures. I looked at Daniel. "These aren't normal businesses."
No.
"What are they?" "They're camouflage." He slid another document toward me. This one stopped me cold. Near the bottom of the page appeared my full legal name. Authorized financial consultant. I looked up immediately. "I've never seen this document." "I know. My signature is fake." "I know. My license number was copied from public records." Daniel finished. "Someone had inserted my professional credentials into financial agreements worth tens of millions of dollars. Without my knowledge. Without my permission." I suddenly understood why someone had invested so much effort stealing my identity. They didn't just need my name. They needed my professional credibility. Daniel watched my expression carefully. "Do you understand now?" I nodded slowly. "I think they wanted investors to believe I reviewed these transactions." "Exactly." He opened one final folder. Across the top was a schedule for Labor Day weekend. Location: Lake Tahoe. Private investor retreat. The dates matched my family's vacation perfectly. Every major meeting occurred while photographs of my relatives smiling by the lake flooded social media. "They weren't just taking a vacation," I whispered. Daniel shook his head.
No.
"They were entertaining investors." I continued reading. Each meeting listed attendees, potential financiers, corporate attorneys, private lenders. Then I noticed something impossible. One attendee appeared on every schedule. Celeste Romano. My name. I looked directly at Daniel. I wasn't there. "I know. They pretended I was. They needed everyone to believe you had already approved the financial structure." My pulse accelerated. They removed me from the trip because someone else was pretending to be me. Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowly pushed a sealed evidence envelope toward me. "I think this explains everything." Inside was a copy of a hotel registration form. Guest name: Celeste Romano. Room number: 841.
Check-in.
Saturday afternoon. Check out. Monday morning. Every field looked legitimate. Every signature looked like mine. Yet I had spent that entire weekend sitting alone inside my apartment in Boston. I felt physically sick. They built an entire fake version of my life. Daniel nodded. "And they're not finished." I looked at him. What do you mean? He took a slow breath before answering. Because the most important piece of evidence hasn't been shown to investigators yet. What evidence? Daniel's expression hardened. A recording. A recording that captures exactly what Victor said during that Labor Day trip. And once you hear it, he paused. You'll never look at your family the same way again. I barely slept that night. Daniel's last words kept replaying in my mind. A recording. If Victor had actually confessed something on tape, it could explain everything. The following morning, Daniel called me. I've arranged a meeting with federal investigators. So they already know? They know pieces of the story. And the recording? They haven't heard it yet. An hour later, I met Daniel outside a federal office building in downtown Boston. As we entered, we surrendered our phones, signed visitor logs, and were escorted into a conference room. Waiting inside were Special Agent Melissa Grant from the FBI and Assistant U.S. Attorney Robert Hayes. Neither of them wasted time. Agent Grant opened the meeting. Ms. Romano, thank you for coming. I wish we were meeting under different circumstances. So do we. She slid several photographs across the table. They were surveillance stills taken inside the Nevada casino. Although the images were slightly blurred, one thing was immediately obvious. The woman using my identity wasn't me. She wore a dark wig, oversized sunglasses, and professional makeup designed to resemble my facial features. From a distance, the resemblance was convincing. Up close, it wasn't. Yet somehow, every security checkpoint had accepted her. Agent Grant pointed toward another figure standing nearby. Do you recognize him?
Victor.
There was no doubt. Even with sunglasses and a baseball cap, I recognized my brother immediately. My throat tightened. So he was there. Yes. Another photograph appeared. This one showed several people walking through the casino lobby. My father. My mother.
Victor.
2 men wearing expensive suits. And the woman pretending to be me. I couldn't speak. Agent Grant carefully observed my reaction. You had no knowledge of this meeting?
No.
No involvement. None. She nodded as though my answer confirmed something investigators already suspected. Then Daniel placed a small digital recorder onto the conference table. This is why we're here. The room became completely silent. Agent Grant pressed play. At first, only road noise filled the speakers. An engine. Wind. Occasional laughter. Someone changed the radio station. Then Victor's voice became perfectly clear. Everything's running on schedule. One of the investors laughed. And your sister? Victor answered without hesitation. She's exactly where I need her. Another voice asked, won't people notice she isn't here? Victor chuckled. They already think she's here. Several people laughed. My stomach twisted. The conversation continued. One investor sounded uncertain. I still don't understand why we needed an impersonator. Victor replied confidently. Because investors trust licensed accountants. He laughed again. My sister's reputation is worth more than mine. The room fell silent. Even Agent Grant stopped taking notes for a moment. Then another voice entered the conversation. It belonged to my father. Victor? His tone sounded uneasy. Maybe we've pushed this far enough. For a brief second, I hoped he was about to stop everything. Instead, Victor answered, relax. If anything falls apart, he paused. Celeste takes the blame. No one interrupted him. No one objected. The recording continued. One investor asked, what if she finds out? Victor laughed louder than before. She won't. She's sitting alone back in Boston wondering why she wasn't invited. More laughter filled the vehicle. I felt my hands shaking. The worst part wasn't Victor. I already knew what kind of person he was. It was the silence. My parents said nothing. Not one word. Not a single objection. The recording ended after nearly 40 minutes. Nobody spoke. Finally, Agent Grant looked toward me. I'm sorry you had to hear that. I nodded without answering. There were no words. Assistant U.S. Attorney Hayes broke the silence. This recording legally came into our possession through the rental company's fleet management archive. I looked at him. What does that mean? It means the evidence is admissible. Daniel explained that years earlier, his former company had installed fleet monitoring systems for corporate rental programs. Most recordings were automatically deleted after a short period. However, one backup archive had survived because the rental company preserved it after receiving an internal fraud complaint. No one realized its importance until investigators compared the rental dates with the casino transactions. Suddenly, everything connected. The fake identity, the investor meetings, the shell companies, the family vacation, the impersonator. It was never one isolated crime. It was an organized fraud scheme. Agent Grant closed her notebook. We're executing search warrants this afternoon. Things moved far faster than I expected. Before sunset, news alerts began appearing across every major website. Federal agents had searched Romano Strategic Holdings. Computers, financial records, and electronic devices were seized. Multiple bank accounts were frozen. Several executives were taken in for questioning. Victor wasn't arrested that day. He had disappeared. No one knew where he was. That evening my phone rang repeatedly. First my aunt, then 2 cousins, then my father. I ignored every call. Minutes later, my mother left a voicemail. Celeste, please answer. Things aren't what they look like. I listened to the message twice, then deleted it. Not because I hated her, because I no longer knew whether anything she said could be trusted. Just before midnight, Daniel called again. They found Victor. Where? Trying to cross into Canada. I closed my eyes. For the first time since Labor Day weekend, I felt something close to relief. But Daniel's next sentence erased that feeling immediately. Celeste. They also found someone else. The woman who impersonated you. I took a slow breath. Does she know Victor? Daniel answered quietly. Better than that. She says she's been part of your family's life for nearly 15 years. I frowned. I've never met her. You probably have. You just never knew who she really was. At that moment, I realized the biggest secret in this entire case still hadn't been uncovered. And the truth about the woman who stole my identity was even more shocking than Victor's crimes. The next morning, I was invited back to the federal building. This time, the atmosphere felt different. The investigation had moved beyond suspicion. Now it was about filling in the missing pieces. Agent Melissa Grant greeted me outside the interview room. We have someone who wants to speak with you. The impersonator? She nodded. She requested it herself. I wasn't sure what to expect. Someone capable of stealing my identity, fooling security systems, and helping orchestrate financial fraud should have looked intimidating. Instead, when I entered the room, I found a woman sitting quietly with her hands folded on the table. She looked exhausted. No designer clothes. No expensive jewelry. Just a gray sweater and tired eyes. She slowly looked up. My name is Elena Vasquez. I know. I'm sorry. I didn't answer. There wasn't much to say. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, Elena broke the silence. I never wanted to become you. I crossed my arms. Then why did you? She took a long breath. Because Victor gave me no way out. I had heard excuses before. This sounded different. Not because I believed her immediately. Because she wasn't trying to justify what she'd done. She was trying to explain how she got there. Elena revealed that 15 years earlier she had worked as an administrative assistant for one of Victor's companies. Back then, she handled scheduling, travel arrangements, and corporate records. She wasn't family, but she spent enough time around family gatherings that relatives recognized her as just another employee. I searched my memory. A woman carrying folders, answering phone calls, standing quietly in the background during holiday parties. I had seen her. Countless times. I had simply never learned her name. When did everything change? I asked. The day Victor discovered I was good at paperwork. She gave a weak smile. I could copy signatures almost perfectly. That talent, innocent at first, slowly became something far darker. Victor asked her to recreate missing documents, then altered contracts, then false financial statements. Each request became slightly more serious than the last. Whenever she hesitated, Victor reminded her of one thing. He controlled my life. She explained that Victor secretly paid for expensive medical treatments after her husband suffered a serious workplace accident years ago. At first, she believed his generosity came without conditions. Later she learned it was leverage. Every favor became another debt. Every debt became another threat. By the time she realized she was trapped, leaving was no longer simple. Victor possessed years of evidence proving she had participated in document fraud. If she walked away, she would go to prison alone. So she stayed. Then came Labor Day. Why me? I finally asked. Why steal my identity? Elena looked directly into my eyes. Because you couldn't be bought. The answer caught me off guard. She continued. Victor originally wanted you to approve the investor documents yourself. What? He invited you into several business meetings over the years. She was right. I remember declining every invitation. I had always told Victor the same thing. I don't mix family with professional ethics. At the time, I assumed he simply wanted free accounting advice. I never imagined he had something much larger in mind. When you refused, Elena continued, he realized he needed another plan. That plan became me. Or rather, a manufactured version of me. She described months of preparation, public interviews, professional conference videos, social media photographs, copies of my licensing records. Every available public document was collected and studied. Voice recordings helped them imitate my speaking style. Makeup artists reshaped facial features. Custom contact lenses matched my eye color. Professional clothing copied outfits from my business website. The goal had never been to fool people forever. Only long enough to convince investors that Celeste Romano had personally reviewed every financial statement. The Labor Day trip created the perfect opportunity. Everyone expected me to be with my family. No one questioned seeing me in Nevada. Except, I wasn't there. I sat silently absorbing every word. Then I asked the question that had haunted me since this nightmare began. My parents. Elena lowered her eyes. They knew there would be investor meetings. My heartbeat quickened. But they didn't know Victor had created a fake version of you. I frowned. They never noticed. They thought you had changed your mind at the last minute. I stared at her. What are you talking about? Victor told them you decided to arrive separately because of work. Pieces suddenly clicked into place. The social media posts, the group photographs, the strange camera angles. I had assumed they intentionally excluded me from every picture. Maybe they hadn't. Maybe someone resembling me had been standing just outside the frame during many of those moments. Not because my parents wanted to erase me, because Victor wanted them to believe I was nearby. I wasn't ready to forgive them, but for the first time, I questioned whether they had known the full truth. Before the interview ended, Elena reached into a folder sitting on the table. She handed Agent Grant a small flash drive. I've hidden copies of everything. What is it? The agent asked. Victor's insurance policy. Inside the encrypted drive were thousands of internal emails, private ledgers, investor correspondence, offshore account records, and recorded conversations dating back almost a decade. Elena had secretly copied everything. Every illegal transaction. Every forged agreement. Every hidden payment. She hadn't kept the files to protect Victor. She had kept them because one day she hoped someone would finally stop him. Agent Grant carefully placed the flash drive into an evidence bag. This changes the entire case. As Elena was escorted from the room, she stopped beside me. I don't expect forgiveness. I looked at her. You won't get it today. She nodded. I know. Then she quietly added one final sentence. But I hope one day you'll remember that I was the first person inside Victor's world who finally chose to tell the truth. After she left, Agent Grant turned toward me. There's one more development. What now? Your grandmother contacted us this morning. I blinked. My grandmother? She says she's ready to testify. I felt my heart sink. My grandmother had defended family unity for as long as I could remember. If she was willing to speak now, whatever she knew had to be far worse than anything we'd uncovered so far. And it was about to explain why Victor risked destroying every member of our family just to keep his secrets buried. I hadn't seen my grandmother cry since my grandfather's funeral. When I walked into the federal building the next morning, she was already sitting inside a private interview room. Her hands rested quietly on a wooden cane. She looked smaller than I remembered, older, tired. But when she saw me, she stood anyway. "I'm sorry, Celeste." Those were the first words she spoke. I hugged her without saying anything. Some apologies deserve silence more than answers. After we sat down, Agent Melissa Grant activated the recorder. "Mrs. Romano, whenever you're ready." My grandmother nodded. "I've kept this secret for too long." The room became perfectly still. She slowly explained that Victor's financial problems hadn't started recently. They had started almost 7 years earlier. Back then, Victor became obsessed with high-stakes private gambling clubs that operated outside traditional casinos. At first he won. The victories made him arrogant. Then he lost. Again. And again. Instead of stopping, he borrowed money. Not from banks. From wealthy private lenders who expected repayment no matter what happened. Within 3 years, Victor owed more money than any of his businesses could realistically earn. He hid the debt from everyone, even my parents. To keep making payments, he quietly sold company assets. When that wasn't enough, he created shell corporations. When those stopped generating cash, he began recruiting investors using fabricated financial reports. Every lie demanded another lie. Every fraudulent deal bought him only a little more time. Eventually, even that wasn't enough. Then Victor noticed something.
Me.
My professional reputation. According to my grandmother, Victor often complained during family dinners after I left early. "Celeste has the one thing investors trust." My grandmother remembered those exact words. "She has credibility. Not wealth. Not influence. Credibility. Something Victor could never purchase." When I repeatedly refused to join his businesses, he stopped asking. Instead, he built a counterfeit version of me. As the interview continued, Agent Grant asked the question everyone had been avoiding. What did the rest of the family know? My grandmother answered carefully. Far less than Victor wanted people to believe. She admitted my parents knew Victor needed money. They believed the Labor Day trip was an opportunity for him to negotiate legitimate investments. They suspected he exaggerated profits. They never imagined someone had stolen my identity, nor did they know Elena had been impersonating me during meetings. They were foolish, my grandmother admitted. They chose loyalty over questions. But they didn't know the full crime. That distinction didn't erase the pain, but it mattered. After hours of testimony, investigators finally possessed a complete timeline. The fraudulent companies, the fake financial statements, the identity theft, the investor deception, the gambling debts. Everything fit together. 3 months later, Victor accepted a plea agreement rather than face a lengthy federal trial. He pleaded guilty to conspiracy, identity theft, wire fraud, money laundering, and securities fraud. The judge called the scheme one of the most calculated abuses of family trust she had ever seen. Victor received a lengthy prison sentence. Nearly every major asset he owned was seized. Luxury homes, investment properties, vehicles, bank accounts. The businesses he had spent years bragging about collapsed almost overnight. Former investors filed civil lawsuits. Business magazines that once praised him published articles describing the fraud in detail. People who once fought for invitations to his parties suddenly claimed they had barely known him. That was Victor's karma, not just prison. Watching the image he valued more than anything disappear forever. As for Elena, her decision to cooperate fully changed her future. The court considered her years of documented assistance, but it also recognized that she voluntarily preserved evidence that ultimately dismantled the criminal organization. She received a significantly reduced sentence and entered witness protection after the case concluded. I never saw her again. I hope she finally found the peaceful life she should have chosen years earlier. My parents reached out countless times. Letters, phone calls, emails. Eventually, I agreed to meet them. Not to pretend everything was normal. To hear the truth directly. Neither of them tried to defend Victor anymore. My father admitted that he ignored obvious warning signs because he couldn't accept that his son had become someone capable of destroying his own family. My mother confessed she had spent years convincing herself that asking fewer questions somehow protected everyone. Instead, it protected the wrong person. Forgiveness didn't happen that afternoon. Trust certainly didn't return. But honesty finally entered the room. Sometimes that's the only place healing can begin. A year after the investigation ended, Daniel invited me to become a partner in his new consulting firm. We specialized in corporate fraud investigations, financial compliance, and identity protection. Every case reminded me why truth matters. Sometimes the smallest inconsistency inside a financial record reveals an entire hidden world. Ironically, the greatest investigation of my career began with something that had nothing to do with numbers. It began with a family vacation. Every Labor Day since then, I spend the weekend somewhere completely different. Sometimes hiking in the mountains. Sometimes visiting small coastal towns. Sometimes simply enjoying the quiet at home. Not because I'm avoiding painful memories. Because I've learned that peace isn't something other people give you. It's something you choose after surviving the people who tried to take it away. If my family had invited me on that trip, Victor's plan might have succeeded. If that cruel social media caption had never been posted, I might never have questioned anything. The very humiliation meant to isolate me became the first clue that exposed an entire criminal conspiracy. Life has a strange way of revealing the truth. Sometimes the people who exclude you aren't rejecting you because you don't belong. They're removing the one person capable of uncovering what they're desperate to hide. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done if your own family betrayed you to protect a secret? I'll see you in the next story.